It was devastating to learn that the legend Eddie Van Halen had passed away earlier this week. His name is synonymous with the electric guitar, which he truly revolutionized in a way that very few guitarists ever have or ever will. I think it can even be quite easy for young people, such as myself, to lose sight of quite how game-changing his playing was when that debut album, Van Halen, burst on the scene in 1978. I'm sure that album was the one that most people tended to gravitate towards upon hearing of his death. I mean, it's guitar perfection, the explosive tapping of Eruption, the energetic riffing of Running with the Devil, or just the brilliance of Jamie's Crying. But for me, despite my love of the band's discography, well, only the David Lee Roth era, the album of theirs that influenced me the most and helped shape my musical taste, my approach to guitar, everything musically for me, was 1984. It's an album that's been with me for as long as I can remember. I couldn't even begin to tell you when I first heard it, but I must have been very, very young. It's an integral part of my musical DNA. So to pay tribute to Eddie, here's my review of 1984, one of the greatest 80s rock albums. So let's get a little bit of background out of the way. 1984 was released in, you guessed it, 1984. It produced a #1 US single with Jump, and the album sat at #2 on the Billboard 200, just behind Michael Jackson's Thriller, which of course Eddie Van Halen also appeared on the song Beat It. And this was also the final album to feature David Lee Roth until 2012's A Different Kind of Truth, and the final album ever to feature all 4 original members, the Van Halen brothers, Michael Anthony and David Lee Roth. But, I mean, you could read all of this from a Wikipedia page, so let's get on to what actually makes this album such a classic. So this album's often considered to be quite a synth-heavy record, and admittedly, when I often think about it, I think of the synth chord intro to Jump. That's what I associate the album with. But in reality, and I counted, there's only 3 tracks that really have any, if not a significant amount of synth. The 1-minute intro, 1984, Jump, and Oh Wait. The rest is just guitar-driven goodness. It really is a misnomer to consider this to be poppy, synthy Van Halen just because Jump is, since most of this album rocks every bit as hard as anything else in their discography. However, from the opening intro, 1984, you could certainly be led to think that it's gonna be a really synth-heavy album. 1984 sounds more like the intro to a Rush song with maybe a tad of Baba O'Reilly at the end. And while I would argue that it doesn't really set the tone for the album as a whole, because as I said, there's only like 3 synth songs on the album, it certainly does set the tone for the first full opening song, Jump. I know there's a lot of people, whether big Van Halens or not, that just see Jump as a bit of a corny throwaway song, a little bit of a meme for the band. But for me, well, it's actually my favourite Van Halen song. It probably always will be. And that's not to say that I necessarily think it's their best, if I put my slightly more impartial critic hat on. But it's a song of theirs that just quite simply brings the biggest smile to my face, brings the most amount of joy. It was the first Van Halen song I ever heard, and there's just something supremely comforting and warming in the timbre of the synths playing that iconic chord progression before Lee Roth comes in with that "I get up and nothing gets me down." It's just a pop masterpiece, expertly crafted by Eddie with a great live feeling with Ted Templeman for a song that should sound so overproduced and studio-y. And then as the song moves towards its chorus and the guitars come in, how can you not want to just shout along and physically jump with the band? But if it seems that bit too synthy for you, there's also a fantastic guitar solo at the halfway point, which, okay, it does build to a climactic synth solo. And yet, look, the song is cheesy as heck, but it's perfect. But yeah, this album could really rock out as well. As I've said, it is definitely not just cheesy synths, and it has some of the band's strongest riffs, especially in the 2 other singles, Panama and Hot for Teacher. Hot for Teacher is a song that I've just been obsessed with since I heard that Eddie had passed away. I really cannot stop listening to it at the moment. I've maybe listened to it like 10-something times in just the last couple of days. I think I'd forgotten almost just how brilliant it is. Perhaps I would rate it as the band's best song, better than Running with the Devil or anything else. Jump's always going to be my personal favourite, but Hot for Teacher is just incredible. Alex's drums start to pound like continuous bursts of gunfire. He then brings in the cymbals, building it up, and then out of nowhere, Eddie, like a demon, comes in with this absolutely stunning tapping part that just blows my mind every time. I think it is the best tapping part in any Van Halen song. And yeah, it's quite simple, I guess, arpeggios tapped in quick succession, but it just has this blistering pace and lightning energy that I'm not sure I've ever heard any other guitarist manage to capture. It's just so exciting, gets the blood pumping instantly as he then seamlessly starts to riff on the back of it before then bringing the song into this slightly different feel of a smoky barroom blues riff. We then get just that little bit of David Lee Roth's spoken banter, and then his voice really cruises in a way that only Diamond Dave's could. His signature almost spoken word singing just enables his natural charisma and charm to shine through. I mean, how can someone sing a song about being hot for teacher so goddamn convincingly? I'm not sure there's many other vocalists. Whatever you want to say about Dave's limitations as a vocalist, he manages to do it pretty damn well without becoming cringe, and that is a feat. That is something. I just feel such a rush every time I hear this song. It makes me feel like I'm ready to take on the world, like the world is my oyster. It's startling, and it is one of the great rock songs, and I just can't think of any other song really that has quite the same life and fluency in the guitar part, and combine that with Alex's commanding drums and David Lee Roth's charm, and it's just perfect, it really is. But then in a similarly great vein we have Panama. I mean, what an iconic set of riffs. For me, the riffs here just typify Van Halen as a band, and they also demonstrate one of the things that I think this album accomplishes perhaps more so than any other Van Halen record, and it's kind of twofold. That these are just great songs, and all through the album they are consistently great songs. Now that might sound a little bit vague, but bear with me. I mean, perhaps at times Eddie's guitar virtuosity could feel like it was there just to show off, like it was more a technical display of prowess rather than simply serving the song. And also Van Halen have often had a little bit of an issue of perhaps relying on a few too many covers, which ended up in some of their weaker albums like Diver Down or things as a result. But in 1984, every note that Eddie plays here is not only written by him, but is integrally woven into the fabric of the tracks. And Panama is a great example of that. Pop rock tune with a catchy chorus elevated by Eddie's searing guitar and Michael Anthony's backing vocals to help lift the chorus. Whilst nothing can really beat maybe Van Halen 1 for Eddie's guitar prowess, just in how revolutionary that album was, I think 1984 does a better job of demonstrating him as a songwriter. There's a lot of guys who can shred and play just as fast as Eddie, especially nowadays. What makes Eddie really special is his approach to guitar, which is completely unique and resulted in riffs that were so him and solos that you could hear on any artist's song and you would know it was Eddie Van Halen. And on Panama especially, him and David Lee Roth just seem to be locked together so well, constantly playing off and complementing each other with dexterity and ease, and you get that feeling of push back and forth between both of them. Their egos, instead of just colliding and forming some big supernova, instead they're just gliding around each other, both trying to push to be the star, but in a way that just feels like a natural back and forth rather than a fierce competition. Another example is the fast-paced Top Jimmy. It is a song which really has a right to be as good as it is. It's not all that fancy and the chorus isn't quite as melodic as something like Panama, but Eddie just brings it together in this irresistible package. His use of natural harmonics is gorgeous. His solo whammy fueled and impressive and just feels like a necessary break in the song, wrecking the flow only for it to seamlessly return to the blues inflected riffs that drive the song. Even that core riff, it's not that fancy theoretically, but the way it's executed just sounds like nobody else but Eddie. But of course there's more to the album than just some of the singles we talked about. Of course we also talked about Top Jimmy, and it is easy to just focus on the big singles of this album, like Hot for Teacher and Jump. But across its brief 33 minutes, I didn't even realise this album was so short as 33 minutes, It does a lot more than just deliver catchy singles. House of Pain is as heavy as the band would ever get, with hard riffs combined with crazy shredding. It is an instrumental dominated song, though of course David Lee Roth does sing on it, but I feel he's kind of a bit pushed to the side there. You feel that Eddie just wanted this one to strut his stuff in spectacular fashion, every riff being as iconic as the last. And yet, maybe you could criticise the album on a couple of grounds. Maybe you might say that, oh wait, it's just that little bit too cheesy, basking in its 80s synth. But then again, listen to that chorus and tell me that you won't sing along. Or maybe that Girl Gone Bad is the weakest of the rockers on the album, but god damn, it's still thoroughly engaging. If there was ever a fountain of youth, it would be 1984, the album and not the year. It's one of rock's most rejuvenating albums. It never fails to inspire passion and hope in me, with pace, fire and fury. It's timeless, eternal, and the greatest demonstration of Eddie's talents, both as a songwriter and as a guitarist. Rock music will never be the same without him. So, rest in peace, Eddie, and long live rock and roll.